Rebecca, as you can see, like we're all massive fans of yours. We're really excited to have you with us for the next hour. So just like everyone can settle in, have your cup of tea or cup of coffee. We're gonna sit back and relax. So, can you please give us a brief idea what the series is about, particularly for those who haven't read the book or wanting to start reading Divine Rivals?
Yes, so Divine Rivals is about two rival journalists named Iris and Roman. They both work at a newspaper and they're competing for the same job. And Iris long ago realized that she got this typewriter from her grandmother, and she realized that she can write letters to her brother, or she types letters to her brother, and she realized that the letters disappear when she slides them underneath her wardrobe door. So she believes the letters are finding her brother, who is fighting on the war front, is missing in action. But little does she realize the letters are actually being delivered to Roman, who is her rival. So he's been receiving her letters and reading them anonymously. And one night he decides to write her back. And it begins this relationship between them through letters. And when Iris decides to go report on the war front, Roman decides to go with her. And he decides, like, I need her to know it's me that she's been writing to and that I'm falling in love with. So it's really a very romantic story. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, but it's that same type of feeling. I love that movie growing up, where two people who don't like each other in real life, but they fall in love through letters. So yeah, that's what Divine Rivals is about. And then Ruthless Vows is just the sequel, so I don't want to spoil anything with that one, but it picks up right where Divine Rivals leaves off. And it really just continues Iris and Roman's romantic journey as they are both kind of involved in this war that is being waged by gods.
That is probably the best non-spoilery way to sum it up. Honestly, it is such a beautiful love story, and it's got some of the most beautiful proses. I mean, before everyone's like, "Oh, Jack's from like Once Upon a Time," but now Roman Kid has arrived. So let's dive right into it. Can you please let me tell us like what inspired you to write the Letters of Enchantment series? Like what was your biggest inspiration? Like apart from what you said, like oh you've got mail, probably you have other
Mhm.
inspiration too.
Yeah, so it's really interesting how the story began. And I love to keep a journal at all times. And so I fill journals up with just ideas and anything that comes to mind. And a lot of times I'll just collect a bunch of ideas, and they might not ever become a story, but I still am always writing stuff down. And so I had just started a new journal, and this was the end of 2020. And I think all of us remember 2020 as being a pretty strange, sad year, where I had not written anything new. And I was beginning to feel like, man, maybe there's like no more stories and left in me. I just don't feel like writing anymore. But then I had this one idea and I wrote it down in the journal. And it was a girl who writes letters to her missing brother and the boy who reads them. And I was so intrigued by that idea. I've always loved letters, snail mail. I know, like I mentioned, You've Got Mail. Like I've always wanted to write a story that was very much centered on letters. And so when I had this line, I was so intrigued by it that I had to keep asking questions like, well, why is her brother missing? Who is this other boy reading the letters? How are the letters being delivered to him? Who is this girl who's writing these letters? So I had all these questions. And so I was like, I just need to sit down and start writing and see what actually comes out on the page. And it's really interesting. I had a pretty clear vision of Iris running down this cobblestone street in the rain wearing a trench coat, and she was late. So she's like trying to get to work on time. And when she gets there, she gets to the office and she looks to this bulletin board to get her assignment for the day. And there is Roman, and he got the assignment before her. So that vision was really strong, and it's really interesting that usually when you have your first draft, like things change a lot as you revise, but that initial scene never changed. And so I think I just had a very strong concept of who Iris and Roman were from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And when I started writing, like the story just really came together in a very magical way. The that whole book, writing it, it was like I had been waiting so long for a story like that, and then it just was like the most magical experience writing it. So yeah, that's kind of like it began just with a line from my journal and just kind of grew from there.
It's just that line that hooks you, like, and then it just keep on scratching your brain, can't get it out. Like, you need to do this. That's actually an awesome, really story. Is there any parts of the book or any scenes that came from your own experience? It could be the struggles, could be, or like you said, that rivals to romance, perhaps.
So I didn't have a quite the swoony rivals to romance that Iris and Roman have, but I will say that when my husband and I were dating, I was living in the state of Colorado working at a dude ranch,
Mhm.
and he was back in Georgia, so there was quite a bit of distance between us, and this ranch I was at was pretty remote, so there wasn't like Wi-Fi, there wasn't a lot of cell service. Like people go to the ranch to really unplug and ride horses and square dance and all that. And so my husband and I, again, dating, we would write letters to each other. And so we actually also had this journal that he would write in and then send it to me, and then I would read what he wrote, and then I'd write back and send it back to him. So really our beginning of our relationship began through letters. And so I think that was just, again, something that I always wanted to write about, just loving this idea of just, I think just letters make you slow down a bit and really like take in the moment. Whereas I think the world we live in now is so fast paced that there's something really beautiful at just like having something tangible too, like someone's handwriting that they wrote to you, I just think is beautiful. But also like with Iris and Roman, I loved writing about two writers because I've always been very literary, loved writing. And so having the chance to write about two writers was so much fun as well.
That was, again, an awesome story that it was literally stemmed from your own personal history of sending each other journals. And yes, part of the letters between that makes sense with Iris and Romans with all the writing. It takes you when you write letters, especially, it takes you to slow down and think and just be in the moment and pour your heart out. That's incredible, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, why did you choose war as a setting? Because it can be quite of a heavy topic to be discussed or placed in a book, as because in the book we've seen this is not just not a normal war. This is the war of like between two gods essentially, and we've seen divisions from the war in the east and the separation from the west side of this world from it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel like the setting really chose me. I don't think I was setting out to write a story centered around a war to begin with, but again, going back to that original line, I knew her brother was missing. And so I was like, well, how is he missing? Like, what happened to him? And I quickly realized that he was a soldier and he was missing in action, and just how terrible that would be to know your brother is off fighting and you have no idea if he's dead, if he's alive, if he's been captured, if he's been wounded, like you just don't know. And the weight that would, just the weight Iris would feel trying to learn what happened to him and reconnect with him. And that kind of makes a lot of sense that why she would write letters to him and have this idea that they are magically finding him against all, like she's just hoping so badly her letters are finding him. And I also think when I started writing, I could see the world. Like most of my other fantasy books are set in more of like medieval time periods, more ancient time periods. So this was a shift for me to write something that felt a little bit more modern. We have electricity, we have trains, and so when I had that sense that the book was going to be kind of the turn of the century, early 19th century or early 1900s. I just had this sense of like, and then I knew her brother's missing at war. It just made sense for me to gravitate to building a world that felt almost as if this was an alternate England during World War One, if like the war had been waged between gods. So it was something that kind of came on gradually, but also thinking about Iris and Roman both being journalists. And then finding their way to the war front to report on the war and just really putting their own lives on the line, just to be able to go and witness and bear truth to what's happening and be able to write about it and give that information back home to the newspaper. I just felt like made a very compelling story. So again, it was all these pieces that came together as I was working out the plot and all the details. But in many ways, I feel like the story did. It was like it found me and like this is what I am. And so I was like, okay, let me write this.
Yes, that's interesting take too. It's not like you chose that as a setting, but it chose you.
Mhm.
So, how long did it take you to complete this series? As I checked, Divine Rival was originally published in April 2023, and Rootless Vows is originally published in December 2023. So when you submitted it, it's as if like it's already a done duology, was it?
So I wrote, so Divine Rivals, I started writing it November 2020, and it was finished by February 2021. So I wrote the book fairly quickly. And then when I wrote it, I'd finished it. I knew it was good. I knew it needed a second book. So I wanted to sell the book as a duology. But I handed it over to my agent to read, and I told her, I said, I think this is like one of the best young adult books I've ever written. And I don't know like I don't know which publisher is right for it yet, but here it is. Tell me what you think. And so she also read it and loved it. And so we kind of spent some time revising it, getting it ready to go on submission, which is when you send it out to editors to see if they want to acquire it. So I
Mhm.
went through a couple multiple rounds with her. My critique partner, Isabel Ibanez, who was also a YA author, she read it from like the very first draft. So she had a lot of good feedback for me. So I had multiple rounds of edits, and then we went out and sent it to editors. And there was a particular editor that I actually asked for, and her name's Eileen, and she works at Wednesday Books, and so I just felt like she would be a good fit. And I guess I just had this good gut feeling because she did. She read it and loved it and wanted it right away. So we sold it. I guess you say it was mid 2021.
Mhm.
And then I started doing revisions with her. And then I started writing Ruthless Vows. Probably it was like end of 2021, beginning of 2022, 2023. So the series was complete before Divine Rivals was published. So there's so much you have to do. Publishing can take quite a while, where usually, like when you sell a book to an editor, it's going to be about 2 years before the book hits shelf. And that gives you plenty of time to do all your revisions, plenty of time to begin to market the book and have, you want to give it plenty of time for readers to actually like discover it, see it recommended so people get excited about it. So I will say, like, again, the books, especially Divine Rivals, like drafting it was very quickly, but then of course, like it went through many, many rounds of revisions, and the same with Ruthless Vows.
Was it painful revision? Is that
Oh,
how
I
it
don't
feels?
like to revise. Yes, I'd rather draft than revise. So revisions are always hard.
Yes, because like sometimes I also join part of the ARC reader, so ARC reader team. So that's why
Mhm.
when it hits the shelf, it's like it's part of fun, build up that
Yeah.
momentum.
Well, that's why we really appreciate readers who do read those advanced copies and leave early reviews because it helps build a lot of hype and get people excited. And so, yes.
I love that. So which part of the story I like that's most memorable for you to write? Like even like after rounds and rounds of editing, you like just like no, that one will always feel like my flight in general.
Let's see. So I think like with Divine Rivals, there are quite a few scenes, and I think one of them, I don't want to like really spoil anything, but it's the scene in the field. Um, and the chapter is called Collision, where Iris is running to Roman.
Yeah.
And that scene, I think I had envisioned it for a while. So when I finally got to write it, it was such a like my heart was like pounding when I was writing it. And the funny thing is, as I was drafting the book, I was sending the chapters to my friend Isabel. So she was actually reading it as I was writing it. And she said she read that scene. And then that night she actually dreamt it. So she saw like Iris and Roman running to each other. And it's like, that's when you know, like you have like a really good scene when your friend is like dreaming of your characters and like can actually see them. So that was always like one of the most, I think, if I could go back in time and relive writing a scene, it would be that one because it was just so powerful.
Yes, that was a good scene. That was a good scene because I've read this book in physical book and as well the audiobook too recently as part of my reread. That scene is still ingrained. That
Aw.
is that is absolutely beautiful. Um, so apart from like the endless draft and revisions, what was the most challenging part of writing this series, do you think? Is it the story arc, the world building, or like? But you said you already have a pretty strong character of Iris Minot, or like the love arc of Iris and Roman Kid. Like, which part do you think was the most challenging?
Mm. Yeah, so I'm a very character-driven writer, so it makes sense that I see characters first, really vividly, and then I build the world and plot really around them as I go. So I'm very much a discovery writer. So a lot of times I have like these ideas of like I see these scenes like the scene in the field, like I could see it coming. It's like, okay, I'm riding towards that scene, and then I get to it, and like, okay, now I'm riding towards this scene. So I have these ideas of like scenes I want to reach, but I have to discover how to get there. So I think sometimes it can make revisions a little bit more challenging because I am discovering so much on the page. Sometimes my revisions require quite a bit of rewriting, but then it's like I have all the pieces, like how do I make it all fit together, or weave it together in a way that's not too long? Because that was one thing, like with young adult books, they're very conscious of how long they are because the longer they are, the more like paper they are, which actually makes the cost of the book go up. And you don't want a YA book costing like $30, for instance, you want to keep the price point where it's like not too expensive. So there's a lot of things that go into it. And I think with Ruthless Vows in particular, and this really just goes for any sequel, like the second book of a duology is always harder because not only are you continuing the arc from the previous book, but you're having to continue building, but then you have to conclude everything. And again, you don't want it to be too long. And so the first draft of Ruthless Vows was like 150,000 words, and I knew it was too long. So my editor's like, we need to get it down to what like Divine Rivals was, and Divine Rivals was like 109,000 words. So it's like, I don't think I'm going to be able to cut that much. But I was able to cut, I think, about 30,000 words from that draft. And that was so hard. I think just knowing like what to cut and what to keep and how to continue like polishing everything. And of course, I always feel like the final, like building up to that very final climax, like it's so exciting and like the words are pouring out of me. But I was also really tired because I was on a deadline. So it's like, okay, like I'm having to write all day and like into the night. So yeah, there's multiple like pieces of the story. I think some scenes are more challenging than others. I will say like the characters at least were probably the easiest thing for me to write, and then just really trying to support like the world, like them support the world support them. And the way I wrote the books too, I wanted to focus, it's very
Yeah,
romance forward. So the romance is really driving the story. That is where I want to spend most of my words on. But at the same time, you have this very interesting world and the mythology of the gods that readers are curious about. So I think just trying to like balance everything was also like a little bit challenging. But at the same time, I love taking on a challenge. Just every book that I write, I want to get better and I want to test a new skill out. So, but yeah, I will say overall, second books or like third books in a series, whatever, however many books in a series, like they're so hard.
I completely agree with you. Especially, I read mostly fantasy, so world building, like you said, you wouldn't want it too lengthy, especially for a YA book, but you don't want it too
Mhm.
slim, then readers will get still confused. But you've done it wonderfully.
Mhm.
Like it's like sprinkled all over. And the more you read, the more you're deeper and deeper in the story you go, and the more you discover how intense this war is. It's not because at the start it's just they're living in the West, they're living in oath, everything is redacted or subjugated to that line of levels like, oh, that war is never to come here.
Hmm.
She was just there trying to find out where her brother is. She's missing her brother. And yeah, it is quite, it was like you said, it's quite sorry, like it's to the deep down, it is a love letter to each other. That's probably the best way to
Yeah.
describe it. That balancing act.
Yes.
Glad you made it through.
I am
glad
really
you
glad too.
glad you made it to the other side. So, how did you do your research for this series? Like, was like, because I always ask this to like different authors because they always have different approaches. Like you said, you're character driven, so the like Iris already came to your mind first. Like, oh, this is me. She's already like, oh, this type, like this type. This is how she dressed. This is like that particular thing that you said that she's running with a wet French coat, trying to get to work like is that how you build it, the characters, and then one by one, and then the story arc later on?
Yeah, so I feel like Iris and Roman were definitely like this major, like very vivid thing that I saw. And then I could kind of see even when she like finally reached the office at the newspaper, like there were desks, there's like the typewriters, everyone's got their cup of tea, they have the little like lamp light. So even then it's like, okay, like I'm getting a good sense of what this world is. And I did do like, especially with like the war portions, like when they actually are at the front and like what was it like in the trenches? Like I did have a few World War I books that I was able to use to help research like how were the trenches constructed and like what were the bunkers like when there were attacks, a lot of times it was like this stalemate between the two and how one side would shoot the artillery and then with the cover of smoke they would move or else they would just be shot down. So just a lot of ways like the tactics of that was definitely I used a lot of books to research that. And I watched two films that I like to recommend. One is 1917. It's really beautifully shot.
Yeah.
And there's actually a song from that book that I listened to, or song from that movie that I listened to a lot while I was writing Divine Rivals, and it's part of the playlist on Spotify. But that movie was filmed so beautifully. It was like you're like going down into the trenches with the soldiers and the camera's behind them. And then you realize like there hasn't been like a camera break where it's like, flipping back and forth. Like this is like one long continuous take and you realize it almost makes you feel like you're holding your breath a little bit, like you're there and it's like tense. It's like, oh gosh, like this is like one long take. So that movie was like really beautiful, I think, to watch visually, to see. And also Testament of Youth was another film that I watched, and that one is absolutely heartbreaking. It's very much based on a true story, centered in World War I. And like I don't think I've cried so hard in a movie. So like just go if you're gonna watch it, know it's like a really sad, tragic movie, but I think it really has a very powerful message behind it as well, since it is based on this woman's true story and like all the people in her life that she lost to the war. So sometimes I like having, even something like music inspired by the time period, like being able to watch films, like visually see, also having just the research books. And then this was also something kind of funny, but the books, they are very much inspired by England. And so I definitely like to use like some of the British terminology. And I know that the books were published in the US, so most of the spelling is still US spelling, because I know sometimes there's differences, but um, I remember I had somebody thought I was British because the book felt so British, but it's like I just love to read fan fiction and especially Hermione fan fiction. So you kind of learn all like the terms that they use, and it's just, like snogging. We don't have a good like a term like that in the US. Like it's just perfect to use. So anyways, just having, I think, being fun in that regard, looking up, using the British terms instead of the English, like the American ones, like even something as simple as we little like list bank of say them in England. And so that was more of the fun side of research that I did.
Funny you said with the flat and stuff because in fun fact in Australia British and also American.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so now I'm waiting for you to put snogging, that word, in your next book.
I know it's like I'm very tempted, you know.
It's just write it in your notebook and then like for future reference.
Yeah.
I am so looking forward. So if I find the word snogging in your book, I will always refer to like, yeah, this interview.
You'll know.
Yes. But like you said, you mentioned with all this research into movies and books, because in the book itself, there's also references not just as the soldier you're talking about in the war, because they always said in the war about the feeling as the soldier itself. Wait, give me a second. Oops, there you go. The feeling from the soldier's perspective. But this time around, as Iris and Roman, they went out as journalists. They they interviewed all these people who suffered from all this war. That sometimes it's always lost. Their voices always been lost. They've never been heard because it's always about whose injuries or like this many troops has been lost. But what about the families? Like the, the families of said soldiers in itself. So this was being touched on pretty like very very beautifully in the book itself. Like you said, from the testament of youth, now I can kind of picture it now.
Yeah, thank you.
Heartbreaking story. So, which character? I know, like, it's kind of hard to ask authors, like, which characters do you love the most? It's like picking a favorite child. Which characters do you enjoy writing the most? Let's
Is
say,
it just, are we just pertaining to Divine Rivals
just the
or
duology and
all of my
no,
books?
no, just the series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting enough, like when I first drafted the book, it was just Iris's. And of course, my friend Isabel, who I've mentioned previously, she was reading as I was writing. She was giving me really good feedback. And so when I got to the end and she read to the end, she was like, I really think you should add Roman's point of view. And I was like, oh no, Isabel, that means like I have to go back and like rethink the story. Like, where would I put his chapters in? Like, what chapters of Iris's would I have to rewrite through his POV? What new ones of his would I have to add in? Like, how does that change the romance as a whole? Because sometimes, you know, romance is really effective when it is just one POV and you don't know what the other person's thinking. But Isabel's like, I really want to know what's going on in his mind. Like, I really want to see him receiving a letter from Iris and like, you know, picking it up off the floor of his room and reading it. Like, what is he thinking? And so I was like, okay, let me try to write that scene where he is at home and her letter arrives and like, what is that like? And so I think I was expecting him to be more difficult to write, but then I was like blown away when I wrote that chapter of his, just how he was just as effortless to write as Iris was. And then I had so much fun like going back through and adding his POV. So again, I think like going into it, I thought like Roman was going to be the hardest, but then he wasn't that hard. Like I think, but I will say like with Iris, I knew her really, really well. And she probably, this is actually really interesting. My husband, he's not a big fantasy reader. He likes more nonfiction type of books, but he decided because of all, you know, all these people talking about Divine Rivals, he's like, I think I need to actually read this and see what's going on. So he listened to the books because he also likes, he's more of an audiobook. And he would get to certain points and he would be like, I just know you wrote this because and I'm like, well, I did write it. You know, but he'd be like, no, I can tell because the way Iris reacts and responds to thing is like exactly how you would react to it. So he was seeing me in these interactions of Iris, which I thought was really interesting when you have someone that knows you really well, that actually reads your books and can pick up on these pieces of you that you consciously woven it just like tickled him. Like I just know you wrote this because I can just see you the way Iris reacted. That's exactly how you would. It was very my like she was annoyed just Roman probably at the end.
Characters like, or just visually, or even just characters. There's okay, like inspired from like famous people or like celebrities.
Hmm. So interestingly enough, no, because I get asked a lot about who I would cast, like if there was a movie, like who would you cast? And I don't really have anyone in mind. I will say I have a Pinterest board for the book, and I came across a few photographs. I think they're of models, because I think, or just like photos that were updated of people that I'm not exactly sure who they are, but they resemble very closely to how I picture Iris and Roman. So if you're curious, you can always go check out the Pinterest board. But as far as like famous people, I don't. And to answer, go ahead and answer the question. If it was made into a movie, I really would love to see for Iris and Roman especially. I think the most important thing is that you would have two actors that have great chemistry with each other. So that would be like really the forefront. Like these two have to really like bring a spark to the screen. But I honestly would love to see maybe some up and coming actors and actresses who aren't as well known that can really step into the role and like in my mind always be Iris and Roman, if you know what I mean. So
Yes.
yeah, I don't have anyone famous like really in mind.
uh, like we're just like, it's okay. Like we were just trying to visualize, you know.
Well,
But
sometimes
my
I love to ask my readers like who would you cast? And
the
they always
podcast,
have really good ideas because I don't
the
know.
fan cast, the good old fan cast. But we're all gonna second on the petition of like, please make it into like a movie. It
Fingers
deserves,
crossed.
it deserves the big screen, Rebecca. It does. It's not just on the paper. It does. The audiobook itself, it's spectacular. So it needs the visual too.
Yeah, I think it could make a really beautiful film. It's very cinematic, so we shall see.
Oh, let's all fingers crossed, everyone. All of this out. So like you said, you're very character driven, yeah. So as you said previously, Iris came into picture in your mind. Does that mean like all the character itself, like visualization, is a big part of yourself, or is it just the idea and then you write it?
Yeah, I feel like I have a pretty strong like vivid imagining. And someone's actually, this is a really interesting point too. Someone asked me, when you write, are you looking through the eyes of your character or are you like you are filming like it is like a
Mm.
movie, like you're actually a camera panning in? And I definitely am like a camera panning in. And I think that's why I see like let's say when Iris and Roman are like at the Oath Gazette, I can see the two of them and but I see everything else around them and I'm very much into those details. So if you've ever read my book, you know like I love the atmosphere. I love to describe little things as well. I want you when you're reading to like see and taste and feel and hear everything around you with the characters, but it is more of like me panning like a camera. Um, and then what was the original question? I just went on a rabbit trail now. I don't remember what you originally.
Are you more like? But I think you just said it yourself. Describe it yourself. Like you're very visualization on the character itself, rather than you write down all the notes and then the visuals come later on as you are writing down notes.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely more in the moment. And I do keep like with every book, I keep a journal. So if I have anything like description wise that I don't want to forget, it's like I will write that down in the journal. So all of my books have a journal to go along with it where I have all of the notes written down.
But yeah, that is also an interesting point of view, because some authors have it like some of the characters saying like, oh, this is how I want to be written, or some authors saying like, oh, from like a third point of view, I'm just looking in, I'm just describing what's been as the stories plays along. It's like you're just in for
Mhm.
the ride, as they said.
Yeah.
That is interesting. um so speaking of characters, how did you choose the name for the characters? Because they are quite unique in itself. Because we have Iris, Winnow, and Roman Kid, and then you have Marisol Torres or Tia Atwood, for instance.
So I love to collect names. So again, one of my journals is just filled with names that I have come across that I think are beautiful or unique or names that I want to use later. And so Roman was definitely a name I have been holding on to for a really long time, trying to figure out who was the right character for it. Iris is very similar. I love anything very botanical, floral when it comes to names. And so for her, and I don't even remember where Winnow came from, but it probably was something that I had written down in one of my name lists.
Mhm.
And so it is such a cool last name. I was like, oh, this is like perfect for her, especially since they call each other by their last names.
Yeah.
With Roman, trying to find his last name was trickier, and I actually had his it initially was Roman Dacre. So I had his last name as Dacre, and I was just like, this is not going to work because, I can't just see Iris yelling at him, Dacre, just it needs to be something cute and snappy. And so then I came across Kit, and so I was like, oh, Roman Kit. Like I could totally see her yelling at him, like Kit, just it rolls off the tongue. But then I like the name Dacre, so I shifted that over to one of the gods because it's such a unique looking name. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like names that I have been saving, collecting, waiting for the right character to come along. I love to also visit if I'm looking for name inspiration. There's a couple websites behind the name will have a lot of like really beautiful names with their like meaning and their origin. And then also Nameberry is really helpful because they'll even be like, oh, like, you know, seasonal inspired names are very cool, unique vintage names, and they have like a whole list. So sometimes I will
Yeah.
go and like use their list if I'm like looking for a name that I'm not sure exactly, like I haven't found it yet. And usually a lot of times, sometimes you'll have a character and you find a name and it's just like perfect, like, oh, that's perfect. And then I always hate though, occasionally I will name a character something and then I'll either realize I have too many names that begin with the same letter. Like I might have like three names that begin with M. And like on the page, I can start looking a little like confusing to a reader. It's like, oh, I need a name that doesn't begin with another M. There's certain letters that I love that I'm always naming characters with like the same letter names. So sometimes you have to switch. But for the most part, like Addie's name was there from the beginning. Matasol's name was there from the beginning. I just felt like I don't know, like these names are waiting for them and then they just fit like perfectly.
Like how about like the gods and the goddess names? Because for instance, like the big two is Dacre and Enva.
Yeah, I think Enva was a name that I had been saving for a while, and it just seemed like a really beautiful, unique name.
Hmm.
And then like there's a couple other gods' names, and again, they were just ones that I was kind of I was looking for really unique sounding names. And of course, Dacre was one I think had also been on my list for a while. Like I said, I almost gave it to Roman, and I was like, this is not going to work. Like I need to give him a different last name. So it's interesting how sometimes you have to shift names until they find the right characters.
That is also quite interesting take on like when you're visualizing Iris try to yelling out kid's last name
Mhm.
is like because that's how you test out if the name work or not. I think some people's also doing that with if when they have children.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's a good test, I would say.
yeah. Say it out loud, yell it out loud. Like, how does it feel?
Say it out loud, do it out loud, and probably thrown in some scenarios too while you're at it.
Yeah.
So the Letters of Enchantment series is hugely successful and widely beloved by like worldwide sensation, honestly. Like regardless where they're from or their background or like even ages, it's just widely loved to love. But as an author, like, do you ever like that second guessing, like, oh, maybe I should have done that, or maybe like I can take it differently. Like, like it's not regret per se, like just that inkling feeling, like that part of your brain, like maybe I should, would have, could have. Are you perfectly happy with the way it was done? It's perfect, but either way, it was perfectly perfect as we all absolutely enjoyed it, obviously.
Yeah. No, this is somewhat of a dangerous question to ask an author because I think a lot of us we do want the books to be perfect, right? And
Yes.
then But to answer it like just shortly, no, there's not a thing I would change about the series. I'm really proud
Okay.
of it. I think the way I wrote it was how it was always supposed to be written. Now, when I wrote the book, it was what? My life at the end of 2020. And I think that's why it came out the way it did. I was, like I mentioned, I was feeling really sad and kind of discouraged by the state of the world, just not feeling connected to people. And I wanted to write a romance about two people who fall in love against great odds in a world that feels very uncertain. And it's probably just was reflecting of what I wanted to read at the time. Now, let's say if I had the idea now, would it change? Probably. Like I'm older now. I've lived
Hmm.
through things now. Like would it be the same? I don't think so. So it's kind of like playing that, man, if I could go back and change it, like or rewrite it now, it wouldn't be the same as it was. And I think it's perfect as it is. And so I will say one time with one of my books, The River Enchanted, that book came out in 2022 was my adult debut. And most of the time, I will not go back and reread my books cover to cover after they're published because I don't want to have that feeling of, oh, why did I write that way? I'm so worried that I'm going to feel that, like, oh, I should have written this better, and holding my current self against my past self when I wrote that. So, but with River Enchanted, I did a reader read along. So when we were gearing up for the sequel to come out, I was like, okay, everyone, like let's read it together, and I'll do like Instagram lives. And I even gave away an annotated copy. So as I was reading, I was annotating. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about rereading this thing. But when I read it, I almost fell in love with the book even more. And I couldn't even believe that I had written it. It's like, I can't believe I wrote this. Like, there were some passages I was just like, I can't believe I wrote this. But you think back, like, at the time where I was in my life when I was writing that book, like, it's just very powerful. So, and I feel like I feel very similar. I haven't read Divine Rivals or Ruthless Vows cover to cover since they've published. I will go back and reread favorite scenes. But I feel like I would have a very similar experience if I read those books cover to cover. There's not one thing I would change because again, it's like that's where I was at the time of my author journey, and that's where I was, and that's how the story came to me. It's how it's always supposed to be. But of course, as an author, you're always looking like, what can I do even better? Like that was great. How can I even continue to improve and challenge myself and write it again and in a different way. You know what I mean? Just like always wanting
Yeah.
to improve and grow. And so you look back on what you've done, and like each book I feel like is a little bit like going up a staircase where you get better and better and better and better. At least that's the goal, right? You just want to continue to improve. But yeah, no, I really I'm just honestly very much amazed by the reception the books have had, like not in a million years, that I think so many readers were going to love the book and it would resonate with so many readers. So, and have so many translations is really incredible.
Yes. I think like you said, the process, like in this book, every time I try to encourage people to read it, it's always I just pull up these lines and they already hooked. I was like, is that actually an actual line or is this a no? This is actual line. You want to see another one? It's that's already hooked them on. So it's probably got one of the best writing of proses, which I like everyone, like all readers love. And like you said, translation, there's nothing lost in the translation in itself. Well, like especially for us Indonesians as well, it's just beautifully translated to like so regardless of your writing in English and wherever they are in the world, I don't think none of it will be lost in translation.
Aw.
That is beautiful in itself.
Yeah, thank you. No, that means a lot to me.
So, is there because you've mostly like well so far you've only written in fantasy. Is there any other genre you want to try write, for instance, or are you happy to stay in fantasy but probably trying like a subgenre of a certain fantasy?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting question. I think at the moment, I'm very happy writing fantasy. It's always what I really loved reading when I was a teen, so I feel like most of my imagination kind of drifts towards fantasy stories. But I never say never either. So you just don't know if I end up having an idea that strikes that is very different. Like I'd be curious to explore it. I will tease. Sometimes I think about doing something like along a horror novel,
Ooh.
but I don't really like too much scary stuff. I feel like it would be like a very like romantic horror, if that makes sense. I don't know. Like a Crimson
Gothic, like
Peak,
a
lots of
gothic romance.
atmosphere. Do
Gothic
what?
romance. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah. More along the lines of gothic romance, probably. And then sometimes even think when I was a teen, I loved the Dear America series, which was like, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there was like a whole set, and they were basically about girls that lived through different times in American history, and it was like their journal. And so I loved those books. So maybe if one day I had like some type of historical fiction, maybe like if there was a certain time and place that called to me, maybe. But I don't know. Like at the moment, I'm really happy just writing fantasy books. But we'll see. We'll see. You never know.
Or could you uh maybe stick with the genre, but you're trying out different tropes instead?
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, like you kind of mentioned, like kind of the gothic fantasy, or even I'm trying to think. I've never written a love triangle. I'm almost a little scared to write a love triangle. I just have never written that. But I mean, it'd be a nice challenge. I'm trying to think if there's any other tropes that would be the one. So one of the tropes I'd always wanted to write was fake marriage, like you're pretending you're married with somebody, and I actually just did that in Wild Reverence. So I'm really excited to have like taken on that new trope. But I also had never done like childhood friends to lovers, which is also featured in that book, which was really interesting to write. It's a completely different arc than, say, like Iris and Roman, who like from the beginning,
Rifles
you
to
know,
romance.
hated each other, were rivals. So yeah, I'm sure I'm always kind of just waiting for the next idea to strike and to see what it is. And like I said, I never say never. So we'll see what comes in the future.
Yes, never say never. And it's never too late too.
Never too late. Yeah.
Never too late. We always like gonna wait for your next book. It's like, oh, what is this? Like, let's see what Rebecca's doing.
Oh, that's sweet of you.
So, before we wrap this up, like anything you'd like to say to your Indonesian reader?
Yeah, so this is honestly like the first time I've ever had one of my books translated and in Indonesia. So it was a huge moment, like when I got the news that it was going to be translated and published. And so I think for me, it was just knowing that, have readers there and be able to have my books reach you where you're at. And of course, the editions, the Indonesian editions are absolutely stunning. And we've had quite a bit of translations of the books, and most of like the covers, they're just kind of either they follow the US cover design or the UK cover design. And I loved how with the Indonesian editions, they just took on a completely different approach. And I loved it so much, almost like you're looking at a paper and you have the beautiful illustrations. And even me having, I know I couldn't like physically sign the books, but having my digital signature in there. No, I just think like the whole package was just absolutely stunning. And I can't wait to see the books in person. But no, I'm really, really happy to know that my books are available there from Indonesian readers, and just really appreciate the support. And I think, when I was beginning my journey as an author, you're just like, oh, if I could just get like, a book deal. And then you don't even think like, what about one day, like seeing your book in a different language and just how surreal that is. That's just really, honestly, probably was one of the biggest moments is the first time I did, like I held one of my books in a different language, and just knowing it has reached readers around the world is just really incredible. So I just want to say thank you to all my Indonesian readers for reading the stories, for loving them. I just really appreciate you. And I hope you enjoy the beautiful editions.
That is some lovely words. There you go, readers. Now, like for those, because some of them just had their book like arrive. Some already like
Oh,
they read it in like one day and that's it. They're done. They loved it
oh,
so much. And I don't know if you know this. There was actually like Mizan Fantasy. They do like polls like for actually so their readers or their followers actually can choose and vote for the covers. I remember when it happened. So that your
oh.
final one was actually a fan vote. Like that's the one that won.
Oh my gosh, no, that makes me so happy to hear. Like, how cool is that to have the fans even be able to like take part in that? That's really
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes, so I remember when Mizan posted it, and then that was there was two options, and then we get to we get to poll like which one would be like which one we preferred, and that was what you like what we have now was the final result.
That's so cool. I love it. Like I said, I was like when I was sent to me like this is what we're thinking, like these are the designs, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is really incredible." So, that's amazing. I love to hear that.
All right, that was probably it for me. I think that was we went down the nitty gritty or like, and we managed to have no spoilers. I think that
Yeah.
should be enticing for everyone for who hasn't read Divine Rivals or wanted to start. So there you go. You've got pretty much like a sneak peek of what you're expecting. And for those who's already read it, like if you wanna reread it again, you're more than welcome to in whatever version that you want. It's honestly such beautiful series.
No, thank you. No, I really appreciate you like taking the time to chat with me. I feel like I could talk to you all day, so we could just keep talking. But no, I really appreciate you.
And I've seen like as we were talking, I'm reading through all the comments. Like everyone is saying like, "Oh, we love you, thank you, Rebecca," and saying like, they now Roman Kid is their new favorite book boyfriend.
Aw.
And yes, and we're also glad that you also love the Indonesian edition too. I think any final last word?
Final
Any
words. Yeah, just thank you so much. I really appreciate it and so glad I got to chat with you and get to see your face and meet you. And thank you to everyone tuning in. And like I said, if you're just getting your books, I hope you enjoy the stories. And I will say for I might as well say this. My next book is coming out in September in the United States. It is called Wild Reverence. And it is part of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a prequel to Divine Rivals, but it's set in the same world and it's set 600 years before Iris and Roman. So it's about a goddess named Matilda who uses her magic to carry messages between realms. And then one day, the goddess of death asks her to deliver a letter to this mortal lord who's doomed to die. And Matilda realizes this mortal lord is this childhood friend that she once had. This kid once dreamt of her when he was a boy, and now he's about to die. So she goes to deliver the letter to him and realizes she wants to do all that she can to keep him from dying. So she kind of gets pulled into this race against time to save him and risks her immortality as well as her heart in the whole ordeal. So yeah, that's my next book. And like I said, it's set in the same world as Divine Rivals. If you've read Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, you're gonna find Easter eggs, little things in this book that I think you will appreciate. If you haven't read Divine Rivals Ruthless Vows, that's okay. You can still read it because it's its own story. But yeah, so that's the next thing coming out, and I thought I might as well mention it since it is Divine Rivals related. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble, and I hope you do enjoy the stories when you read them.
There you go, everyone. You've got a sneak peek, so you've got plenty of time to
Plenty of
read it.
time.
Plenty of time before the next book, published.
Yes.
um, I need like Kak Yuli, if anyone want to say from Mizan Fantasy or Kak Dita,
Yeah, thank you so much, Rebecca and Annie, for tonight. It's very I don't know, romantic Valentine with everyone with
like this.
everyone readers in Indonesia. Yes. Thank you for joining us. And for your information, that Annie told you before that we had like two different covers from Indonesia. So the rest, the cover that not chosen is we translated become the beautifully crafted wooden poster. So the some of the readers uh, can enjoy that the wooden poster, and we will give it to you with your copies later. Yeah.
I
So
love that. That's amazing.
yeah. So we hope that you will enjoy our Indonesian edition. And last but not least, maybe for the rest of you in here, please you could open your camera because we will have like a group photos. And for those who already have like the books Indonesian fashion, maybe you can just uh, feel free to hold it up to the camera. Okay, so I will. Are you ready? So there will be seven. Oh, this is huge.
This is massive.
uh, I will take a seven picture for this room. Okay. Are you ready? One, two, three. Cheers. Yeah. The next slide. One, two, three. Okay. Another slide. Okay. One, two, three. Okay. Three more slides. One, two, three. One, two, three. Okay, and the rest. Okay. Thank you so much for having us here. And have a great night. And have a great morning. Bye-bye. See you again.
Bye. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Rebecca. Thank you, everyone, too.
Thank you, Kak Ani. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, everyone.
Sampai ketemu di Zoom, di WhatsApp group ya. Dadah.
Yes. See you, Kak.